All right, so welcome to another episode of the New Labor Movement Show. I am one of your hosts, Troy.
I'm still Ray.
And we are here to go over another week of local law, labor, and politics. Both the RNC, Republican National Convention, and the Democratic National Convention took place. So we wanted to kind of go back and forth with some of what we thought were some of the standouts from those conventions and just talk about them a little bit. So that's what we're going to go about on this show.
The trade war was it was a real stressful and truly a devastating effect on a farm. Most probably what people can relate to mostly in agriculture is soybean tariffs. And then whenever you compound the effects of the COVID-19 virus, nobody could have prevented that. It's a shame our leadership misinformed the people like myself and the country on what was coming down the road. My biggest concern is that if these trends continue with this type of leadership, I will be the last generation farming this farm.
Yeah, it's a scary thought, and I'm sure a lot of farmers feel the same way.
I don't have the answers, but past experiences, if something doesn't work for you, it's time for a change, and that's why I'm supporting Joe Biden all the way.
Now this is funny because on the it's funny you and this is the thing about topics. Nothing is really monolithic. You're going to be able to find someone on each side who's going to be able to support the other side's opinion. Because then you had someone on the RNC side, they had someone come out and say a farmer who was thankful for Trump and then he's the greatest and I'm going to vote for him again. But I try to look at it in a general. So as far as a general, farmers as a whole have been unhappy with what has happened with the trade war that was started by this administration and the effect that it has had on that business. Now, the question is, some of them are still to the point, though, where even though they have been more or less put on quote unquote welfare, had to be funded by the government to keep going, that they still see themselves voting for this administration go back in again.
I think you have to be, first of all, I find it just shows you what a crazy time we're in. Because generally when you do tariffs generally help protect American industries.
The thing with the tariffs, I agreed with the tariffs, of course, because it was an unfair balance of how the trade was going on. I agree with the concept. What I had a disagreement with was the execution. So now if you're going to go after China has, number one, they have so much debt that we owe to them. That's one big thing. And then also the way we've been intertrading with them and our intellectual property. That being said, if you're going to more quote unquote war with a country, it's an economic war, you get prepared for that war and then implement the strategy in a sound way. You just don't do it haphazardly. The thing I felt would have been to get all the other countries who are also involved with China, who are our allies, to be able to recognize the same thing, which they do, prepare for that war. And this tax cut they did, they're taking all that money and giving it directly to corporations in the U.S. That money should have been pulled to prepare your troops for war, who are like the farmers in the steel industry, who are going to be affected by that and be able to feed them. It just seemed like it was done without no preparation.
We do so much trading with China that there's bound to be pain on both sides. And it's how much pain you can take reasonably before you can make the other side comply.
Well, that's the thing is, I just knew it was going to be a dirty fight, and I wish that they would have got prepared for the fight to be able to make sure our people were safe as they went into it. It just seemed like it was went into without thinking about that.
Unions are subverting our republic, so they undermine educational excellence, morality, law, and order. That's why they spend hundreds of millions annually to defeat charter schools and school choice, trapping so many precious low-income children in dangerous, corrupt, and low-performing schools. To fight back on behalf of children and America, brave teachers brought a lawsuit against unions. And do you know who intervened against us? The Obama-Biden administration and California Attorney General Kamala Harris. They argued against us at the U.S. Supreme Court, Their comrades labeled us spawns of Satan and slandered us in mainstream media. No matter their abuse, we'll keep fighting for the country and children we love, just like President Trump. He's breaking the union's grip on our schools. That's why unions have tried to destroy him since the day he was elected.
There's a lot of people who believe in the union, want the union structure, and know in their heart that they're better off with the union. But then you're inside the union and you have an opinion that maybe 45% of the union has, but since you don't have the majority opinion, you know that union politics really are, people have sharp elbows. And if you say something that the union doesn't want you to say, even if you're right, you're going to be cast aside hard. And while I do believe in school choice, I still believe in unions. And I think there needs to be a way that you can have schools that provide better choice for parents, but don't go corporate and don't squeeze out unions. And unfortunately, right now, it's either public union schools or corporate run charter schools, and there's no other option, and that sucks.
Well, I tell you what, number one, that school choice stuff I don't believe in. And number two, even if it was say where that she had a disagreement on how the unions are run, that's something, when you have a problem at home with family, you keep that in-house. You don't go out on a public broadcast and blast unions. Not even I'm blasting my union or the way it works. It sounded like she had an entire tirade about unions in general and how unions and what they support and unions. She made it seem like a union is a horrible thing to be in and that she's forced and entrapped to be a part of it. Meanwhile, I'm pretty sure that if it wasn't for her union, the benefits that she, well, I know the benefits that she have, the ability to work how she has, work weekends or paid overtime, all the things that unions fought and gave benefit for her to be able to get, for her to sit up there as a union member and just totally smash the entire thing, and to be head of, like you said, leading off the night of part of the Republican National Convention. Nobody said anything about it. To me, that seems to be the mentality of the way that entire party thinks and move forwards about union, and she just represented that all in her speech.
Again, I think it's I was uncomfortable with what she said, but I know that there are many people out there who would identify because of union politics what she's going through. But again, you're right. It's one of those things that we as a union community have to find a way to be more tolerant of other views or other ways to do things, because unions, like people, are not monoliths. We all don't think the same way, and they're finding ways to get us 20% here, 20% here, 50% in the middle, and that's going to hurt us.
Yeah, I just think it was a bad look for her to come out, for at least for that speech to be tailored the way it was and to come off and lead off the night for their convention.
I agree. It's funny. I agree with her
for what their party.
I agree with her on policy. I disagree with her on completely the way she went around it. There's a much better way she could have done this and still come across pro-union and pro-school choice, and she didn't. If she would have made it more about school choice and not about how the union squash her, if she would have been more like, I'm a teacher, and even though I'm in a union, I still think school choice can be done smartly. 100% different speech than
my union. You could have wrote the speech for her, right? You could have wrote the speech.
I know.
Storm, sir. Or maybe you felt it as you walked the neighborhood.
Oh my God, the truck is sinking.
For most people, it's overwhelming.
All of this with the global warming and that, a lot of it's a hoax. It's a hoax.
I had spent 5 years working on this report. The Trump administration started to remove any mention that humans were the cause of climate change from it.
I wrote my resignation letter just 6 months into the administration. They were handing the keys of public lands over to private interests. The Trump administration has gone all out, not just to neglect climate change issues and laws, but to reverse them.
We have about a decade before it's too late.
I'm a kid, and I'm going to say to all those adults who are watching this right now, why don't you get up and do something?
Some of the first climate change legislation ever written was by a senator from Delaware.
When Donald Trump thinks about climate change, the only word he can muster is hoax.
America faces a challenge, but if we face it together, we will rise to the occasion and build back better.
When I think about climate change, the word I think of is jobs.
There's so much nuance into this subject that it can't be where either to be in this party, you have to completely pretend it's not there. And then this other party, you have to pretend it's religious orthodoxy. There's so much wiggle room in the middle. So I would say that, unfortunately, I disagree with most of what she says because I believe that it's too much religious orthodoxy. I believe that there is room for things you could do for the climate. I just don't think it has to be, you know, Green New Deal, you know, taxing, you know, carbon tax, all this other stuff. I think there's so much more wiggle room in there than that. But to go the other side, Republicans are terrible at this because they like pretend like it doesn't exist. And even basic science would tell you that even scientists would have to acknowledge that even the Earth itself changes climate just by nature because it just does. We used to be in an ice age. We're not anymore. So obviously the climate changes. So
right. and that was the thing about it too. So I was looking at this and I looked at the DNC stuff and about climate change, and it was standard stuff that they always talk about. What was a big reflection to me, and I don't know if I missed it, you tell me. I looked on from the RNC side. I didn't see them talk about it at all.
No,
I didn't see, and that was the thing. How do you not? So now I go back and I look at it and I'm thinking the Pentagon released a report in January of 2019. And it highlighted that climate crisis was a major security risk to the country. So if the Pentagon comes out with a report stating that something is a major security risk, and then you just kind of ignore it, not mention it at all, during the DNC part of the speech, they were mentioning that stuff that related to climate was removed from, you know, parts of their speech of being able to talk about it. And to me, to totally deny it, I can see if you say, no, we're going to do more research, but to totally deny it and try to ignore it, especially when your own government says that this is a high security risk, to me is very irresponsible. I didn't see anything from their side about it.
I do think that I find it that it is, you know, like they could, believe it or not, they would get killed, not killed for it, but you could get so many more suburban women if you just said, what we're going to do is we're going to plant 8 million trees and we're going to phase out coal by 2040. And that is so minimum, and yet it would still make a difference, and at least you would have addressed it. Everyone knows who I am, and I'd be the first one to say that you can't put your head in the sand on something like that. You can't, because you look negligent.
But you agree and you don't agree, because you do agree, though, that it needs to be talked about.
You need to at least
address it.
He said everything that I could have hoped for. Promise made, promise kept.
He is ready, willing, and able to help. He has been responsive. He's done a lot of good things. What the federal government did was a phenomenal accomplishment.
In our hour of need, and you all literally are helping us in a big way, we were at the edge, and this is life or death stuff, and we're forever thankful for that.
I've looked and I was watching those videos when they happened. So they figured out that right after that, he would say something like 20 different things saying where things weren't done right. But you pull out somebody who, if you were to ask them, how was your response to the coronavirus? They would say you have done a bad job, a horrible response. Why didn't not just take your own people and have them say how good a job you did? Why would you take someone who absolutely feels you did a horrible job, pull clips from them and put them in a video of yours saying how well the administration done? That to me was totally dishonest, lying. Like that's like a manipulation of everything in order to try to do what? Why would you do that?
I think because they're trying to, you know, I'll say this, there's always room for improvement. It could have been better. One, obviously, when the president goes up there and said I'd rate myself a 10, that's obviously not accurate. But that being said, he, you know, the overall goal when we shut down the economy was to make sure the hospitals didn't get overburdened, right? The healthcare system,
right? Correct.
That never happened.
Right.
Then we swore we were going to be short ventilators. That never happened. Not one American in this country who needed a ventilator didn't get one.
Right.
Number three. It normally takes, when they had the Ebola, when they went with Ebola, to get that vaccine out there, it took 2.5 years. This one will be done in probably 8 months. Three, right when the pandemic first started, people over the age of 65 were dying at a 15% clip. They're now at 2%. And to this day, if you are an American, you are 99.5% not going to die or be seriously ill from the virus. Now,
I was gonna say, like, okay, that was some nice.
My major beef with him though is I thought that he could have been better with, instead of having the states wrestle each other for PPE, I think he probably could have stepped up and did something better there. I thought a loophole with him, a bad sign for him, was the PPE. The testing, I don't blame him for, because the bureaucracy is not set up for it. In other words, they've gotten the testing as good as they can. The system was never set up to do 1 million tests a day. And
well, listen,
they've had everyone and their mother looking at it, and they're still going to get it.
This is the thing I have. This is the major thing I have a problem with. One of them was, like you said, to this date, for as long as it's been out, there's still no national plan. There's no national plan for testing, no national plan for recovery, and it's still kind of, they're making up as they go, allowing governors to try to do it on their own when we're supposed to be the United States of America. There should have been one plan laid out from that. And one of the major things I had a problem with, especially with him pulling those videos and saying how good a job they did. And when you look at the timeline of how this virus was, number one, pulling the funding that would have caught this virus before it ever reached our shores. That is a major misstep on this administration part. And then once they were notified about it, downplaying it till they got to the point where the virus got out of control, to me, were big contributors in why we're in the mess we're at now. I think some of the major viruses that came before this, can you imagine if this was Ebola? I mean, everybody says this is just like the flu. Can you imagine if it was something like Ebola and we pulled people from those countries where it came from and it got to our shores because we pulled funding to save money? And the amount of, like, what, the 5 million people that we have infected now, the fatality rate from that would have happened. I can't imagine what will happen when the next crisis happens if this is how you manage crises.
Mark McCloskey says he and his family have been threatened with violence.
Under Missouri law, you have a right to defend your home and the lives of your family.
A search warrant has been executed at the home of Mark and Patricia McCloskey.
The husband and wife attorneys charged with pointing guns at protesters.
They were simply trying to protect their home.
Good evening, America. We are Mark and Patty McCloskey. We're speaking to you tonight from St. Louis, Missouri, where just weeks ago you may have seen us defending our home as a mob of protesters descended on our neighborhood.
America is such a great country that not only do you have the right to own a gun and use it to defend yourself, but thousands of Americans will offer you free advice on how to use it. At least that's what we experienced. What you saw happen to us could just as easily happen to any of you who are watching from quiet neighborhoods around our country. And that's what we want to speak to you about tonight.
I think this is probably where the Democrats are the weakest, and I think this is where they're going to lose the election, because when you have people come on the private property and threaten you 100%, it's like a foundational institution of this country that you are 100% allowed to protect your life and your property when people come on there. They kicked down the gate, they came in, and they yelled at these people and threatened these people and were menacing these people. In my humble opinion, they're lucky they were not shot. I'm not saying they deserved it. I'm saying they're lucky they weren't, because most people put in that position, if you thinking, it's me and my wife, I got 100 people on my lawn, and sugar's going down. Some people shoot first and ask questions later. And then here's the best part: to have all the people on video on the property trespassing, and none of them get arrested, and then they bring these people in and then try to put a felony on them. I mean, come on, it's a scare tactic.
Wow. And
tell me how much you disagree.
No, honestly, from everything you said sounds totally legit insane. I can't see anything that I disagree with you. So I never knew that the protesters came and kicked down the gate to their property and trespassed on their property. So until
yes, that's the part that's underreported. They have like gated community, and they kicked in the gate. I know from the way they show it, it looks like they're yelling at them from the street. Right. Now, if I'm on the street, you're on the street yelling in front of my house, I'm allowed to be scared, but I'm not allowed to threaten you. Now, if you come on to imagine like someone jumping in your backyard. That's a lot different than yelling at you from the street. I mean, listen, you know very well that I have no problem with people going to people's houses and making their opinion felt.
I wonder why. I wonder why.
Right? You know I have no issue with that whatsoever, do I?
And that's the thing, to be able to have a legal firearm to defend your home and your property, I totally agree with. So that is the case. Now, only thing that's, when you say that they kick down the gate, are you talking about, so the gated community is 5 miles long, and the gate at the beginning of the community, someone broke that gate to come in?
No. They have it where, if you can tell, they have a fence around their property.
Okay.
It's like an estate. And, you go on it, and they kicked in that gate and then came up their driveway.
Absolutely.
You know what I'm saying? It was like, so it's almost like they hopped the fence, and they completely were trespassing.
Okay.
But by the way, when you review it, and I have to be as fair as I can be, there was a couple times, if you look at the video, like, thank God the guns were not loaded. Thank God, because there was a couple of times when they were behind each other, they were crossing patterns, like they were walking in front of each other. And my God, if there would have been an accident, they would have killed one another.
Not only that, because that's why I was wondering about the training. And when you saw the pictures of her finger not on the side of the gun, but on the trigger.
No, she had on the trigger.
Yeah.
No. Listen, I am 100% for people having the right to use firearms. It's your God-given right. But please, people, be responsible, be smart, take a class.
Yeah.
Know what you're holding in your hand. Not only so you don't kill someone else, mostly you don't kill yourself. You go on the internet, you can look at 100 people like, click, it jammed. What happened? Boom, they're dead.
My dad thought you would protect military families, so he voted for you in 2016, Mr. President. He says he won't vote for you again after what you did to our family.
The wife of a U.S. Marine veteran was deported to Mexico.
Instead of protecting us, you tore our world apart.
My mom is a good person, and she's not a criminal.
Now, my mom is gone, and she's been taken from us for no reason at all. Every day that passes, you deport more moms and dads and take them away from kids like me.
We will begin moving them out day one.
You separated thousands of children from their parents and you put them in cages. Some of those kids are now orphans because of you.
These aren't people. I don't want them in our country. They're animals.
Mr. President, my mom is the wife of a proud American Marine and a mother of 2 American children. We are American families. We need a president who will bring people together, not tear them apart.
All right. You know me, I'm a hawk when it comes to immigration, but I do think that in this particular instance, it was wrong. The guy served and he's married to the woman. It's got a blanket. It's got to cover her. I don't like people here illegally under any circumstance. I find it maddening that we tolerate this stuff. But that being said, there's exceptions to every rule, and that should be made for them. You serve this country, you should have, you have to be, I'm not saying you're not free from criticism, but the guy served his country, he's a Marine, he's a vet, and he's married to this woman. She came here illegally, all right, fine. Let him pay a fine, let him stay here. I mean, I don't think it serves no one to deport that woman. You want to deport criminals? Go ahead. But I don't see what deporting someone who's been a good citizen actually does.
There's a couple of instances too for this administration with changes in policy. Like even with I saw different instances where people were here illegally, but they were in the service serving our country, and they were putting things in place to change to make them get deported. I'm like, how do you even think about going to deport someone who came here illegally, but is right now fighting, literally fighting and risking their life for this country, and change things in administration to make it where you can now remove them and deport them from this country is crazy to me. And that is like that in the administration make me think of like, where do you really value? How much really value do you say you have for the men in service?
There needs to be, everything has to have an exception. And if you're going to have people serving this country and asking them to service and put their life on the line, they've now paid their debt for being, in my humble opinion, they paid their debt for being here illegally.
Now, what I did find ironic about this is The guy voted for this in 2016. His wife came here as a teenager undocumented because of the during the Obama administration. She could stay. Changing administration, she had to go. But what was funny is he had no problem voting for him when it didn't affect him personally. And he said he thought that Trump would be for military families. When it didn't affect him personally, he had no problem voting for it. But then when it came to his doorstep, now he says he won't vote for Trump for the next election. Why? So why is it always only when it affects you and it hurts you personally that's the time you have a change of heart? But just thinking of other people and what they have to go through, knowing that your wife is one of the people that would have never had the opportunity or never been able to do anything for that same reason, and now you want to change your mind only because it came to your doorstep. And that's the part that makes it like, now I'm like, more or less like, what do you expect? You literally voted to have your wife removed from this country.
Under the Trump administration, New York City Housing Authority has received an influx of cash that it has not seen since 1997.
I'm grateful for the spotlight that President Trump is putting on New York City public housing. I think it's wrong that the Democrats put illegal immigrants before Black Americans. How is it that we have people waiting on the waiting list for New York City public housing for 10 years or more, but yet we have illegal immigrants living here? Something is wrong with that picture.
Since HUD came in with Lynn Patton as the regional director for HUD, it helped us identify some long systemic problems that we are now putting on the table and having discussions on.
President Trump's administration have opened their ear and have listened. There's been improvement in public housing. We're very appreciative of this administration that has come and finally shined a light on what's going on and bringing real solutions to a real problem.
And they played it both ways. They try to say that because they agree with that one particular policy, that they agree with Mr. Trump. And I thought that was a stretch.
Yeah. So exactly that too. I went and looked some of the stuff up. So I came and I tried to pull some information on that just to see, like these people are right here in New York. You want to hear like what's going on. So like just to try to see if they support the entire agenda or not. So I went and looked. And then there was a report right after that where one of the women in particular, I guess, got some heat about a bit being on that video, and she straightly said she was on that video not because she supports Donald Trump, because her community is living in horrid conditions and no one's paying attention to it, and she saw that as an opportunity to get attention to the situation that's happening in the community. She was
anti-nature, not pro-Trump.
Right. No one knows what we're living through. No one knows what we're going through. Nobody's paying attention to it. I saw an opportunity to get light to it, and I took it. Now, what was crazy is that on that in that report they were talking about the 4 people that they interviewed there, and they said at least three of the 4 people didn't know that they were going to use their videos in that manner in the video to make it seem as if they had support for Donald Trump and his administration.
For whatever reason, both people, RNC, DNC, they like to cherry pick. The RNC cherry picked the things that made it look as pro-Trump as humanly possible. Where those people, I've seen the whole video. It's not anywhere near pro-Trump. It's like 100% anti-nature. They go after Bill de Blasio too, but I would not characterize any of those people as Trumpsters.
Yeah,
as that video would have led you to believe.
Right, and that's one thing I don't like about things I saw from their convention. Reminds me of what we're talking about when they post stuff from like Cuomo and the Jersey Mayor. I was like, why are you trying to mischaracterize people's support? All right, so that is for another week of the New Labor Movement show. We are getting closer to election day, so we are going to be getting more in depth into stuff that is relating to the upcoming election. So until next week, I am one of your hosts, Troy.
I'm still Ray.
And we are signing out.